started creating YouTube videos. Is this your first YouTube channel?
Yes. Yeah, it is.
So it's the first time you've ever, because when I first saw your video, I'm like, he's got to have another one somewhere else. And you've got like the plaque in the background somewhere. Like that is
I
literally,
wish, right?
that's the quality of your videos.
Thank you so much.
So take us into your like behind the scenes, like what was your moment? What was your push? Like what made you actually say, I'm going to pick up this camera and not only record, but then edit and then post?
Yeah, no, so that's a really good question. And yeah, so the first YouTube video that actually exists, but how I like to think of it is that it existed a long, like years and years ago in my mind. Like I had been thinking about it and wanting to try it. I think over probably like over 10 years. As you mentioned, like I'm a huge fan of Christian Guzman too, where he's a big like fitness and kind of lifestyle YouTuber where he has always just like carried the camera with him, and I've seen him like progress from where he started up until where he's at today. And even back then when I didn't know what I wanted to make videos about, I was always curious about it. I was always curious about picking up that camera and like sharing my stories or um, making these creative edits and things like that. So it was always something that lived in the back of my head, but I always put it off. I always, for various different reasons, perfectionism. I've noticed, like looking back on it now, a lot of it was perfectionism, thinking that I needed to be have the right camera equipment, have the niche figured out. I needed to feel interesting. That was a big thing too, where it was like, why would anyone watch me? Like, I don't feel interesting. I don't feel like I'm doing these things. Um, so yeah, so that was kind of my main reason. Um, and I just kept putting it off for I'd come up with different excuses of why, like, okay, I need to get a job, I need to get through college, I need to have enough time to do them. And then it was during the pandemic actually where we didn't have a lot of things to do. A lot of those excuses became harder to justify when it came to like time and all those different developments just stuck at home. And so there was another YouTuber that I watched that threw out like a YouTube course just on like basics, getting started and things like that. And so I decided to sign up. And I guess that was like the start of the journey. Like he helped me get initiated with that, where it was just basics of like this is the gear you need, this is the things that you should think of when it comes to niche and all that. And even though I had a lot of the, I guess, like knowledge already, it was more, I guess, the accountability that really helped of like, okay, we had a community and there was like someone there that was prompting me to actually get started. Um, so yeah, that was kind of the start of the journey where I started posting some videos.
Awesome. Did you have the experience with editing or any camera operation skills at all?
No, no, I did not.
And
Um,
it's funny when I started my YouTube channel also during the pandemic, and I literally like I am the most right brain person that you could ever meet, and to think of like any sort of technical like left brain trying to figure things out. It's the fact that I edit my own videos cracks me up. I mean, it's sloppy, but I do it. And everybody thinks it's like the hardest thing to do. I'm like, it's actually really not. Like, over time, but at first they were really clunky. They were really, and I noticed even with your videos, what's really cool is that once you start filming and you start doing it over the course of time, you start seeing more of your personality come out. You have a couple of videos where I'm cracking up in those videos because of your personality. Like the
thank you,
one
thank
where
you.
you are, I think you like walk across your kitchen and then you like scoot back and then you're like, do I smile? Do I not smile? Like your commentary that you leave in there. Um, and then there's also the one where you're like in the dark with the hoodie on and you're like, sorry,
Oh,
sorry, I
okay.
panicked, I panicked. Like it's so because as you're gradually watching a person, you're getting to know their personality. And I think that's what makes people likable and interesting. In person and on the internet. That's the cool thing about vlogging is you actually get to be invited into somebody's life. And I think you leaving those parts in there or adding those parts in there helps people garner some of your like the funny parts of you as opposed to just like talking head videos all the time.
That's so
Um,
important. I feel like
it,
that's
yeah.
because that's one of the biggest struggles when I'm editing or when I'm doing these things too. It's like that battle within myself to like, is this cringy? Is it going to be like maintain retention or things like YouTube and stuff like that? And it's like hard to sometimes like fight to be authentic. It's
Mm-hmm.
again, kind of going back to those thoughts of like, oh, am I interesting enough or things like that. A lot of time when you like compare yourself to other social media presences, um I think it's sometimes hard for that to come through, for you to decide to just do something. And like me, I'm a big overthinker, so I overthink those things a lot, so it means a lot. Thank you for that, that those are actually elements that you enjoy and connect with.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. It showed your personality. It shows you're human. And for me as a creative, I think you verbalizing your like the struggles with your creative process. There's a lot of things that you say throughout your videos that I'm like, oh my gosh, preach. That is so, like, and even a while ago when you said, I don't feel interesting. I feel that way all the time. I'm like, there's nothing that I have to say that anybody cares to hear about. And when I started my podcast because I had postpartum depression really bad. And I had no clue. I have 3 kids. The third kid was a surprise, and I'm older at this point, and I just felt so bad for like 6 months afterwards. And the pandemic, I lost my dad during the like there's a lot of different things that
sorry.
have happened. Thank you. There's a lot of different like just life-changing things that happened during the pandemic that I'm like, "Oh, this is just normal." And then one day I was like, I don't think this is normal. And I looked up the symptoms of postpartum depression, and I was like, duh, like of course this is what it is. So what I did was I created the podcast because I didn't want to do YouTube, and I like shut down Blushing Famous for about 3 months. Just didn't know the direction I was going. And I was like, I
Been there,
just
been
want to
there.
like, like you're like, I don't know. And you're so in your head that you
Yeah.
now have like shut everything down. Like you said something about sometimes you will push it off, push it off, push it off, that you get to the point where I'm summarizing what you said, where you're like, what's even the point of this anymore?
Yeah.
I was like, I thought I was the only person who feels that way
Yeah, no, you
because
lose that kind of spark, that
yeah,
motivation, or
because
like,
you've like pieced it apart and you pushed it off for so long, and now you don't have the motivation. And so what I wanted to do was be able to not show up on camera. I didn't want to see myself. I didn't want to have to get ready. I just wanted to be able to like at 2 a.m. if I wanted to turn on my mic and just talk. And so that's what I did. And I just talked for like maybe 7 or 8 episodes as I was processing the postpartum depression and stuff that what I was going to do to get out of it. And it's been for me, it's been really successful. And just for me to think that I'm just going to talk into the world and see what happens.
yeah,
But I had a friend tell me, I said, a lot of times I just feel like I don't really have much to say. And she's like, you have a lot to say. And so, hearing you talk about your thinking and that you live in your head in a couple of your videos, you talk a lot about that you live in your head and you really want to just live like out here. You want to be in your life. So can you take us through just like analysis paralysis? It's funny because I just did a podcast on analysis paralysis and like what your experience is with that and how do you get yourself, because I think what happens is we feel something and we just listen to that feeling and we stop. So how do
yeah.
you like force through that to get to the other side, to just like break through perfectionism, get out of your head and start creating? What's that been like for you?
Yeah, no, and I think you gave like an amazing example just right now, like when you were talking about what you went through on like some of those tactics. For example, you had the YouTube video, and what you did was you noticed that there was a lot of obstacles that were keeping you from creating, like wanting to be on camera or setting up the camera at random times and things like that. So a big one that I've learned is like, yeah, just reducing those obstacles, make it the friction, just reduce that friction, make it as easy as possible for you, and trying to kind of it may sound like simplistic, but shut off that voice of like, oh, it needs to be this way, or this is how the end result needs to be, or this is what it should look like, and just kind of be authentic, speak to it, see what comes out. I like to think a lot of like, I got some advice a while back of just always think in terms of this is the first draft. Like it can be anything. It could be bad, giving yourself permission. It could be whatever it needs to be, and just like put it out there and that'll kind of help you get out of that rut of like overthinking it and like not actually taking the actions to go forward. And as you mentioned there, like lots of times, like what we don't expect is what clicks with other people. So you having those authentic conversations in your podcast, of what was like real and true to you in the moment, that's what connected with so many people, that maybe if you would have like overthought it and thought these are the exact bullet points I need to speak to, and I need to be concise, and I need to do this, and I need to do all these things that aren't who I truly am, then maybe it wouldn't have connected with other people. Or if it did, then you would be feeling like you're an imposter or something like that.
Right.
Like
And then you get trapped. I've seen,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've seen collectively across a lot of different YouTubers that I watch and content creators that they're shifting gears because I think they feel pigeonholed into what their subscribers wanted. So they got the subscribers and now they just feel like they're dead on the inside because they're not doing what they actually want to do. And so I have a few people that I watch, and they are like, one of them, her name is Catherine Manning, and she shows about how creating YouTube videos and analytics and all of that. And
I think I've seen her. Yeah.
And so she switched to, I think she had like multiple channels, like a vlog channel, and she's like, I'm combining them. I was watching one of her videos not too long ago, and she's going over analytics, and she's like, I'm bleeding subscribers. Oh, well. And then she's like, because they're dropping. And she's like, I understand. They came here for this. We're switching directions. And I've seen multiple content creators saying that, and that's been a big thing for me. I think it's been a slower process for me, and mine truly never was about subscribers to begin with. It was about, I thought if I could expose myself publicly, then maybe I could heal this thing that's going on with me, or at least be able to get control over it.
That's amazing.
And I did. And that's why I say, like, I say my skin may still flush and turn red, but I did overcome erythrophobia, which is a phobia that makes you like shut down. You're terrified, you're complete flight or fight situation that's happening. And there's so many people that are dealing with that. And so but the more people started showing up and saying, oh my gosh, just listening to this made me feel so much better, or so seen. I've never seen anybody ever talk about this before. And it's giving people an opportunity to know that they are writing books about it. They are creating videos now about it to bring awareness, but also it's a selfish thing because we want to be able to heal ourselves. And this is not something I ever thought I would be talking about, but it's interesting that you said, in my podcast, even if I had was very bullet point and very concise, because I listen to people like you and I'm like, gosh, they just look like they got it so together and so clean and crisp, but mine is like crazy. And so when people are like, I like it, I'm like, okay, well, this is who I am truly. And it's
all of us. Like if we fall into that comparison game, like trust me, like I was literally just messaging my sister that yesterday. I fell into that hole too of like over. So I call it sometimes like over consuming, because I think it's like important to get inspiration from like different sources. But I have also noticed about myself that sometimes if I consume too much, then I start like comparison. Then I start, oh, maybe I should be doing this, or maybe I should be doing that, or this person does this. And so I've gotten a little bit better.
So good. Yeah.
I've gotten a little bit better of like, okay, turn it off, like close like, and there's some channels I love the content, but I like don't watch it anymore because I've noticed like, okay, this doesn't inspire me. This like demotivates me because I compare myself right away. And then there's some that like just inspire me. And so I've been like catering, I guess, like what I consume as well a little bit more to help my journey at least.
Gosh, I think that's such a good point that you're making, because you even talk about this in one of your videos. I've binge watched your videos multiple times, so I don't know which is which, but it's one of the videos where you are going on TikTok to do some like mindful and intentional work from there. And you even speak to the point of like, this is what I came on here for, and I don't want to get lost in like this rabbit trail of TikTok. So you were being super intentional about getting on there, because I think that's two things. Like, number one, you can get into over consuming, or you could just get lost. You're like, this has nothing to do with
is it?
Yeah, exactly. or when TikTok starts telling you to take a break, you're like, okay, probably take a break. But yeah, I think the overconsumption of content it's similar to the thing that you were saying about when you push the thing off for so long that you kind of lose the, like, what's the point of this to begin with? We can overconsume such great content to the point of like, mine's never going to look like this. It's never
Why
going to
even
sound like
try?
this. And now
Yeah.
you like went there for motivation, and now you're like going to go sit on the couch and like hang out and watch Netflix for a little bit.
1,000%, 1,000%. I fell into that so much where it was like, oh, I think this is a really good idea. And then as the time progresses, you see other ones, or you see some people with similar ideas, and you're like, oh, okay, like mine's never going to be as good as this one. So even
Yeah,
if it's a good idea, why
exactly.
even try it? And I think like stretching it out that long too, I think what happens, at least to me, is like we almost like turn that idea into like a negative thing, because it becomes now, after pushing it off for so long, it's now, oh, I'm procrastinating it. Like I should be doing that. I should be filming. I should not be taking a break right now. And so slowly, like it turns into this daunting negative thing where you're avoiding it now. Now you're on TikTok because you want to avoid that feeling of feeling
Mm.
bad about posting or filming. And so I think that's been a big thing too, is not letting it get to that point of like, it's a little cliche, but it's like not that you should do it. It's like you can do it. So it's like, okay, I
Mhm.
can post this video. I can express my idea. I don't have to. It's not like a requirement that I don't have to put all that pressure on it, that it has to be a certain time and I have to perform and I have to get this. Um, so that's a big one too.
Mhm.
Um, that's been really, I guess, like helpful in all of it.
See, when you talked about earlier, you said that something to the degree of like there's the resistance of getting the camera out, getting all the stuff out, doing all the things. I think that's a good point too, because I think the least resistance that you can have between you and doing the thing. I know for me that even if that meant just grabbing my phone, because my quality is not that great, it's just me talking, but it's like I literally have my phone on like my stand in the car sometimes, because for my audience, it is very much they just want to hear me sharing about the experience, or like I'm at the dentist and I'm like, oh, look, I was flushing at the dentist, but I feel safe here, or learning to use my voice and telling a story about how, something didn't go as I wanted it to go. And I walked back to my car, and then I got in the car and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm going in there and I'm going to ask for what I need, and breaking down those barriers in my mind of I can ask for what I want. They love that. So my group is fine with that. But what for you really helped kind of break some of that resistance? Did you, oh, I think the other thing too is, for me, and I'm curious enough, this has been your experience as well, is being on too many platforms. Are you
Mm,
running into that with like, so you're on Instagram and you're on YouTube, right?
yeah.
It's just your only two platforms that you're working with.
Yeah, I've dabbled in TikTok in the past, but not doing it like currently. Um, and so yeah, so that I mean that's a big one. Like I'm still figuring all of that out too. Especially with what we talked about, like the niche beforehand. Like um, I've dabbled in like different social medias for different things. So like the Instagram, I feel like I still don't truly know the direction, because I started it off with the um less of the YouTube oriented content and more of like the, oh, let's just do like focus it on like the fitness stuff that I do enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with YouTube, I've never wanted to really, even though I had that transformation video, I'm really big on, or hesitant on, like being like a fitness YouTuber. I don't want that to be um, kind of the direction I go in. Kind of going a little bit back to like the niche things as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I have struggled with kind of figuring that out and figuring out where should I post or where should I prioritize and this and that. But I'm trying to prioritize the YouTube is what I've enjoyed the most. Like I've always seen the other social medias as like more of a something to get me to the YouTube. So like additional steps. And what I
Mm-hmm.
found is that thinking that way, I spend less time on the actual platform that I want to grow on. So a lot of time I've been like, oh, let me do Instagram just because it's um like it's a little bit easier to grow maybe on here, and I'm on here a lot more than I am on YouTube maybe, and this can translate over to people watching on my YouTube channel in the future. But if I'm doing that and focusing so much on that, then I'm not even creating videos for
Mm-hmm.
YouTube. um, and so what I've done recently is just like, you know what, YouTube is what I've wanted to do for so long, what I enjoy. I enjoy the long form content and like the editing and the storytelling. So let me focus in on that, and the other ones are just extras. Like if I have an idea that I can put out there, if I need, I've been using Instagram a lot as like a if I feel like I want to get something out there quick, like I'm feeling like creative and I have like a quick idea, and um to kind of beat that perfectionism of like, oh, I need to spend hours and hours and hours editing it. I've been using a lot of just like an outlet of, okay, like I have an idea, let me just try it and like throw it out there, and it's like a quick little reel or a 60-second video that I don't have to spend like a ton of time on. So that's kind of where I've been, and I'm trying to focus on YouTube. And so if I'm not posting on Instagram, if I'm not doing this, I'm giving myself peace of mind. I'm not telling myself, oh, I should be posting on all of them. I should be taking advantage of every single marketing opportunity when it comes to these social platforms, and just focusing on like, no, let's try to be consistent with the YouTube and do this, and then enjoy everything else. You can do that, and there'll be time for it in the future, but trying to kind of just like focus on one thing, because I'm a little scatterbrained sometimes
Oh
and
my gosh,
want to
yeah.
do everything at once.
Yeah, I had to stop. I mean, I had multiple social media outlets, and I was like, I don't like this. I don't appreciate this. I don't like it. It's all, and it starts getting in that, like, to get people to see what's going on out here. And so I stopped. And that is a huge thing I hear you talk about in a lot of your videos, where you talk about like consistency, just period. And whether that's in your weight loss, whether that's in your YouTube videos, whatever that may be. And I was so like that inner talk about like, well, then they're going to think I'm not consistent out here, and they're going to think I'm not. I'm like, just send them to YouTube. They'll find this page. They can go to YouTube. They'll find the information that they're looking for. And because
And
that,
what you said there is huge. Like the first point, like I didn't like it. Like that's the thing, a huge
I don't
thing
like
that
it.
people forget, and like that they think that they have to do something. But if you don't enjoy it, like you don't have to do it. Like again, that'll translate to your audience on what you do enjoy. They'll see,
Right.
oh, this person's passionate. This person likes what they're doing. They're not just pushing something because it's popular or will bring them more following or whatnot.
Yeah,
Um,
and to have the energy, because that's the thing too, like pouring from a cup, like that's empty, when you're trying to put all this creativity in all these different places and trying to be original and trying to be interesting, and instead of like holding that or preparing that for a video. Were you shocked by the response on YouTube versus Instagram, or did you think that maybe Instagram was going to kind of pop off a little more before YouTube?
um, I mean, I was shocked. Yeah, I was shocked regardless. I thought honestly, like and I think a little bit more with Instagram, like I do a lot of like the self-blame when it comes to that stuff. Like, okay, like if it didn't pop off, it's because like I wasn't consistent enough, or I didn't spend
Mhm.
enough time on this. Um, so I guess I had the thought of like they'd they could eventually pop off if I did everything perfectly, if I
Yes.
executed perfectly. And then when things don't happen, it's typically okay, it has something to do with like Instagram or YouTube. It's just like I didn't execute like to perfection how I planned it in my head. Um, so so that was kind of the journey with like the Instagram, was like, okay, I didn't um it did like the Instagram didn't pop off, but it was like, oh, maybe I could have been a little bit more consistent. I could have uploaded daily instead of like weekly, et cetera, et cetera. And the YouTube one was a surprise as well, because that one I had told myself I was going to upload like weekly leading up to it, and then I uploaded like 3 videos, and I missed like a couple weeks and like a month or two beforehand. And so there was also that talk of like, okay, if this one doesn't take off, or if this
Mm.
doesn't work, it's probably because I didn't execute that plan that I had in my head. Um, but no, thankfully the video did really well. And I was really surprised and happy to see that happen.
Yeah, and your hard work was like finally getting that momentum, because I think we hear that a lot when you're researching things about YouTube, like just keep going. If you just keep going, it will happen. And I think that was a big thing for me. I wanted to get monetized. That was my goal. Once I started realizing like this is doing something, I and it's helping people. Like that really is something that I love. I love that it's helping people. And so I can keep talking about it because I realize that people, they need to be reminded. They need to be reminded that there's so much more than this thing and that we can overcome. And if I need to lead by example, then I'm happy to do that. And it kind of helped me reframe what my negative thoughts were about the chronic condition that I was dealing with. But once I started, I think I got to like 400 subscribers and I was like, I why not monetize? Like I could monetize this, and just got monetized about a month ago. So it's been 3 years, but it's about a
Congrats,
month
that's
ago.
awesome.
Thank you. And it, and then you kind of see the inner workings of that and you're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, you definitely got to keep your day job." But but for now. But still it was just the point of like, wow. And I think the more we kind of break down those barriers, like writing a book, starting a podcast, the more I'm teaching myself like, well,
These
this
are
is not that
possible.
hard. Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
that hard if I just show up
yeah.
to it. So for you and wanting to really kind of put yourself out there, put yourself on camera, was there a lot of research you did and like put into starting that whole process? I know you said you took a course, but did you just have that moment that you were like, we're doing it today, we're doing it, let's go?
Yeah, so when it came to like research and all that, like yeah, that was like my bread and butter. It was like I'd research everything and spend hours and hours, and that would be my productiveness would be like, oh, how much research I did, but then I'd actually like never get it started. Like I'd prepare and prepare and prepare and then never actually like do it. So I had a lot of research I had done. Like I'm big on like YouTube. Like I love like Catherine Manning you mentioned. Like I watched like she every year she would do a like how to get YouTube started in 2021.
Yep.
I watched like 4 years straight of like how to get started, and what was important and the analytics and all that. But again, I never actually sat down to do it and whatnot. So like a big thing to get me started was like one, eventually I think that pressure just kept building up of like I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. um and then just like I guess like sitting with myself and understanding like, listen, if I don't do this, I'm going to regret it. Like I know I'm going to regret it. I and would I rather like move forward with like the fear of what will happen if I start? Like, will I fail? Like, will it not do as well? Or having that what if in my head? Like, um, so eventually, again, like during the pandemic, that's what kind of pushed me to just sign in the course because it was like a simple step. It was something where it was kind of like baby steps. Where it was like, okay, I'm just signing up for the course. I'm not starting the YouTube channel yet. It's just like, boom, I'm signing up. And then it's like little baby steps from there. Like, okay, now I'm just like opening the channel. Okay, now I'm just like getting a little profile picture or banner, and kind of like taking those, breaking it down, taking those tiny little steps to eventually, and putting myself in a position where it was easier for me to take that action was a big part of it. At the same time, around the same time, I also worked with a coach I found on TikTok that she actually talked a lot about like perfectionism. And it was the first time where I realized that I suffered from perfectionism because I always
Mm.
saw it as like a, I don't know, you see it in TVs and movies all the time, and like you see it as like the super prepared student that gets like straight A's and is always on top of everything, and that they're actually like pretty close to perfect. Um, and I never saw myself like that. I was like, no, like I'm not a perfectionist because um um I'm not perfect. Like I don't do things perfectly. I procrastinate a lot. Like I'm not the I wasn't like the highest achiever in class. Like I cared a lot
Mm.
for it and things like that. But with work and class, like I'd procrastinate homework and assignments and group projects all the time. So I can't be a perfectionist. And so after kind of like listening to her and kind of the things behind it and understanding that it's not all about like the actions you take, it's a lot about like the emotions behind it, and the emotions behind like why I was procrastinating was had a lot to do of why I was a perfectionist. Like, I would set things up in my mind to be these big things, and like they had to be a certain way. And um, when I started feeling anxious about them because they had to come out that way and I had to be perfect in executing them, I then go to procrastinating them because I wanted to put off that feeling of anxiety.
Mm.
And so those two things, kind of like noticing that that's what I was doing, that really helped me start figuring out like what are the tools that I need to use to um, like allow myself to take that action. So stop those negative anxious thoughts, and help surround myself with people and tools that can help me take action. So that was kind of like one of those big things in doing it, and like taking that original like start into doing it. And then more recently, kind of a big step as well, because I kind of had like the start. I during the course I uploaded like the 3 videos that we had for the course and whatnot. And after that, after I didn't have the structure and I didn't have the course, I stopped for a while again. Um, and the kind of excuses came back up of like, okay, the world's like opening back up. Like I have to focus more on work. I have to um, do all these things before I can focus on the YouTube or try these things out that I want to try out.
Mhm.
And so kind of more recently, like I've started listening to what you mentioned a little bit earlier of like noticing what are the things that I actually enjoy, where am I going? Are the actions I'm taking like putting me in the places I want to be? So I was big in like corporate, and I was like I had a tech role in San Francisco. Um, and I always saw it as just a step. I was like, okay, I'll graduate college, get like a good job so that I can make enough money that I can then take some time to myself to do what I want. So it's like I kept like putting like these prerequisites to actually doing the things that I wanted or thought that I wanted to do. Um, and I found myself in a place where like I wasn't surrounded by people that I enjoyed spending time with, that I was passionate around, or that I felt good around. I felt like I didn't align with a lot of the same desires or values. Not because of the other people, but just because, oh, if you're in the corporate world, like you might be wanting to like climb the corporate ladder or do something, or get a specific role or continue growing. And I wanted to talk like I was an engineer and I wanted to talk like creative things. I didn't want to talk numbers. I wanted to like, oh, do you know like YouTube retention? And like, did you see like he had this cool hook in this video? Or I'm big into movies and like the cinematography of like the different movies and stuff like that. And
They're like, leave me alone. Is your background a front end engineer or what kind of engineering?
So it was industrial engineering. I got into the tech space. It was more like process based, so like process improvement. Um, so it was a lot of like probability and statistics.
Oh man. I
Yeah.
asked if you're front end. I actually work at a software development company. I am HR there. That's my day job. And
Oh, awesome.
it's my first time. My husband is very tech, but he's like Salesforce tech, like systems and software that such, not necessarily on the engineering side yet, but he's very interested in it. So my span of knowledge of anything from the software development side was like, what in the world? But anyway, I've been there a little over a year. It's been really cool, but in some of the recruiting aspects, seeking out a front end developer versus like a site reliability engineer, like the two totally different types of people. Like the front ends, they're doing all the good, the pretty work. So and the designers, we'll have these conversations and you get to know them and their dreams and their passions. And then like site reliability engineers, it's like yes and no answers to my questions. I'm like, perfect. That's exactly what we need. So so being in that, it's amazing how being in certain environments can really just like drain the life out of you. And I heard you talk about that in one of your most recent videos, about just kind of coming to that realization that this is a dream job, but it's not my dream job. And it sounds like you really take a lot of ownership and a lot of like self-reflection. Like, do you spend a lot of, I know you said you live in your head a lot, but just kind of like processing the world around you and what's happening. So I know a big thing for me, whenever there's a big, like something doesn't feel right with what's around me, but everything looks good and everything should be good on paper. I'm very similar in the way that I will be like, what's wrong with me? I need to figure this out. It always goes to me
Yeah, it's a me
first.
problem.
Yeah. Until eventually you're like, it's not me. It's not me. Is that kind of what happened in your situation where you just hit this wall of like, it's not me?
Yeah, and I think a big distinction is like it could be you, like it could be me, but it wasn't like in a negative way. Like you could accept like okay, like maybe this isn't for me because I don't like it versus like, oh, I have to figure it out and it's a me problem and I need to make it work.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Two sides of the same coin. The one that's like not a me problem, like deflecting, blaming it on other people. And then the other, it's a me problem. And it's because I don't belong here. This is
y-
not what sets my soul on fire.
yeah, maybe there's like different aspects. Maybe it's like part me, part other people, but like it was a lot of like coming to that just like terms of, okay, do I want to spend time like I could spend time like drilling into exactly what the problem is and like who the culprits are and all that. But I think the important thing, and the important thing to get out of it was um, that I didn't like the situation, or I wasn't content, or I wasn't happy. Like I could fight to figure it out and maybe get to a resolution, but it was more of like, do I want to? Do I want to spend that time and that energy um, figuring all that out and making this situation adapt to to get closer or in proximity of what I actually want, or do I want to just like get closer to that situation myself? Um, so I think that was kind of the thing for me where there was, and even in a way, I think it was funny because when I looked at it like in that way, it was like I would see situations differently as well. So I recently, like back in August, I actually like left the tech role, and during like the last couple of months, like it was I was having kind of like a bad manager situation. The relationship between me and my manager wasn't great, and there was like a lot of things that I could have been like, yeah, that's the company's like fault. They're making me uncomfortable. They're making me this. But if I was being honest with myself, I knew like, no, like since I started and had different manager, like it was less uncomfortable because I had good relationships, and I didn't have this situation currently. But if I was being truthful to myself, I wasn't content. I wasn't happy where I was. I was more comfortable, and that allowed me to ignore it for longer. So when I got uncomfortable, or that the peak of my of being uncomfort with that situation, when I thought about it in that lens, it was like, oh, this is actually a blessing in a way because it's pushing me to get out of that rut that I've been in for the past 3-4 years. Um, like I've been in this role for that long, and I've been in roles before this. Um, like before I had like a more manufacturing job, and I thought like, oh no, I just need to again adapt the situation, be closer to younger people so I can connect more and have more friends and things like that. And it's the same here. I got to the tech role, and like that didn't solve my problems, and it's like um that little bit of uncomfort, I saw it as a blessing because it like pushed me out to like actually listen to myself and listen to like what I really wanted to give a try.
Mm.
So yeah, it's
Yeah,
funny when you
that's
look at that.
crazy. It literally shakes you. I love that you said that because you said it in your video too. The one about you quitting your job is that you have always taken the safe road. And that's what was going to happen here was just going to shake you up from that safety and just kind of thrust you out into the world. And you left that job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did. Yeah. And that was one of the blessings too of like this video taking off so quickly, because even if it's not an indication of like, oh yeah, like he's blowing up from here, even if I don't, if things taper down, which I'm expecting them to, it really felt like a um at least like a proof of concept, like you can
Mhm.
make this work. Like there is a way. Like I know this is might be the more uncomfortable way, the way that not the perfect plan that you imagined, but you feel better and you're still finding a way towards something that you enjoy. So it felt like a little nod in that direction of like, keep going, don't overthink things. They might take a little bit longer than you expect them to, or they might not go to your plan exactly how I have them planned out, or think they should. But if you stick to it, like, you can make things work. You can enjoy that. You can enjoy that process.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. My publisher, the first time I was finishing my first book, my first book is not something I promote very often because it's not something I'm proud of. It's more of me
You
just
should be. You
getting.
should be.
I mean, I'm really proud of my second book, but my first book, it's very clunky. It's very, and the reason why I say it's not something I'm like I promote. I was in a way different mindset back then, so I write from where I was during that time. It's not where I am now, but I realized once what it was for. That book was to be published. If it helped people, that's great. It's about my story of overcoming anxiety and depression and suicidal ideation. So it's a memoir. And it was just for me to show myself. I didn't realize this till it was done, that I could do it. And then I wrote my second book, which, like I said, just came out. And that one, I'm in love with it. Like, I love it. I'm so proud of it.
That's
It
awesome.
feels so good. Like, it's really my writing style. The writing styles are totally different. This one is like some poetry, some other stuff, like just random abstract thoughts that I have. And I mean, I love it. But I remember that I got stuck on the first one and I was getting ready to turn it in. And this was like the final moment where you turn it in, and it's going to go to print after this. And I told my publisher, I said, I don't know that I can let it go, because what if I missed something in there? What if I didn't like fully, show a concept of what I was trying to say, or if I spelled something wrong and editing has missed it, which we did, by the way. We spelled break, like stomping the break as like break, and that's all I see when I read that book. So
I love how you like remember it still too.
it's like
Like,
break.
it's page 59.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. I was like, I'm done. I can't read this anymore. Because you don't read your own art with like, this is so great. You're like scaling for like where you messed up. But my publisher said to me, he said, April, I think somebody shared this with him once, and he shared it with me, and I share it all the time, is that art was never meant to be perfected. It was only ever meant to be abandoned. And I'm like, so I think about that when I start getting in my head in that perfectionist place. I'm like, art was not meant to be perfected. It was meant to be abandoned. And so when I get to a place, I'm like, we're abandoning this and letting it go and let the universe do what it does. And, it's just, I feel this prompting in me and I need to release it. And so he literally set me free to really work through that perfectionism and that analysis paralysis when I get there, by telling me, just abandon it and see what happens. Like, and honestly, when
and the
you
second
abandon
book
it,
would have never
it would
existed.
never happen.
Yeah, if that first one hadn't
Yeah.
come out and been what it was.
And the road on the second book was so much easier. It was so much easier. I knew where like a lot of the snags were the first time. And so it was a lot easier to write and prepare and get done and push out. And this one has some media stuff around it. So it's really cool, and I was never expecting all of that. So that's cool. It's just abandoning it
That's
to,
awesome.
to see where it goes. But okay, so let's talk about discomfort. And before we wrap up, let's jump into a little bit about your weight loss journey, because I think that's going to be really important for a lot of people. Number one, I find it interesting that you said, even on the transformation video, that because it's getting so much attention, but that's not really where you want to put your focus. Like, good for you, because obviously you can see like people want this, they want this, they want this. But I would assume that's also just part of like who you are and what you're going to be doing. But if you could just take us into, so from anybody who's done any sort of like, I want to lose weight, we all know how challenging that can be. And I know a big thing for you was some of these like anxious thoughts and things that would cycle through your mind of like, I should do something, I don't do anything. I should do something, I don't do anything. And you did it. And like, you freaking did it. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Look amazing. It was
Thank you
such
so
a
much.
great journey. I love seeing you. Like, when you're on the one video and you say, maybe I'll, it's a transformation. It might have been prior to the transformation video, but you said, maybe I'll step on stage, and you're like one thing at a time, one thing at a time.
Yeah.
And then you did. So just kind of like your process around that, like what really helped you overcome the fear of throwing yourself out there and getting into, I know you got a coach also, but getting into that consistent place to like actually make the goal happen.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think I guess the main thing was like that scared me the most was the like the stepping on stage and like the competing portion of it, because that's where like the perfectionism came in as well. It was like, okay, like I'm 30 now, like I don't get that pass of like, oh, he's just starting or something like that, so I have to, again, just things we tell ourselves of like, oh, I have to be, again, like as close to perfect as possible so that I can have a shot and do well at it. So just like the deciding to do that and signing up, I think was like one of the hardest challenges, I guess, to it. When it came to the consistency and like starting off and deciding to do it, part of it had a lot to do with the again, like that regret of like, since I've watched like Christian Guzman since I was like younger, I've seen him do it. I've seen a whole lot of other people that I follow like try it out and like um, just do something. So it was about doing something that I'd wanted to do and I'd wanted to try, and not getting in my head and not quitting and not telling myself that like if I train for a year longer, or if I give myself a year more to lose weight, that I'll do it. Was like the big thing for me. So that's why I decided to sign up with the coach. I was like, listen, I only have like 90, I think it was like a 90 days between the time I decided to do it and the competition date. It's not ideal. I know for a fact, like I'm not going to get to a point where I want, like where I dream of like how I think I should look like, but that's part of it. Like that's the main thing I want to get over with this. So that was kind of the getting that started and getting that accountability was part of like getting those tools around me. Like I mentioned earlier, is like, okay, and I notice now through like some time of like, what are my points of avoiding things, how I like where avoidance starts kicking in for me. So one of them was like getting that coach and like, okay, if I have accountability, someone that I know I'm going to have to check in with week after week, I know I'm more likely to stick with it. And then just signing up for the actual competition early on was another thing, because I told myself like, if I don't sign up like early, I know I'm gonna tell myself like closer to it, like, oh, like maybe I can just compete, like maybe, oh, there's actually a competition in 2 months from now, maybe I can just do that one.
It's like, you know yourself good enough to know, like, let me put some stoppers in here.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think that's like a huge thing, is just like start noticing yourself, like,
It's like
and
getting
again,
real
like
with
not,
yourself, like be
yeah,
honest with yourself. Yeah.
and not in a negative way. I think same similar to the job situation. It's like not like, oh, you suck because you like you can't stay consistent or you avoid things when it's like, no, like that's a part of who I am, and there's emotional reasons why I react this way. Like I'm reacting to certain emotions that I have that I'm figuring out. And so let me not judge it, and let me just set myself up for success the best way, in the best way I can. Um, so yeah, so that's what I did. And after getting kind of like that started, it was like the first few weeks are like the hardest, obviously, because you're trying to like get into new habits and whatnot. But after that, it kind of like tapers down. It's just like, okay, like I have this goal, like, and I would get excited about it. Um, there would be moments of doubt as well. The specific competition, and I don't think I talked in the video about this, but the specific competition I did included like a video portion where you kind of talk about your story. So that was the interesting aspect to me, was it wasn't just they weren't just judging kind of like how you looked. It was also like, what was your actual story? Like, where did you
Mm.
start off? Why did you do this and all that? And that's what truly like inspired me to try it out, was because like, again, I have that passion for like storytelling, but I one of my biggest struggles going through it was those thoughts of like being interesting came back, of like, oh wait, other people's stories are going to be so much more transformational and more like they're better stories. They deserve it more, like and things like that. And I like had some moments, I guess, in between where I literally thought about quitting because of that. Because I was like, oh, I would even tell myself like it's in a way doing a disservice to like people have to watch my story instead of like watching another more inspirational story. Um and I kind of just like pushed through, kept through with it. And eventually told myself, like, you know what, like maybe there is, even if there's one person out there that has my same exact story, that might relate more to mine, then he might, even if there are, like, I don't know, there's no better stories, was what I kind of told myself. Like, there's
Mm.
stories for some people, for a group of people, and there's stories for other groups of people. So even if there's one person out there that relates to my story, then it's worth it. Then it's worth me putting it out there and them feeling like they're not alone, like there's someone else they can talk to and reach out to. And so that kind of pushed me to keep it going and keep it up, and eventually turn it into that video as well and put it out there.
That's that's amazing. You know, I think that whenever I get in that place in my head where I'm like, what, this is dumb. Who cares? This is so, especially like when it comes to my books, because I read them a million times before we send it off because you have to edit it over and over again. And it gets to that point where you're like, this doesn't even make sense. I don't even understand the point of this anymore. Like, I'm so not clear in what I'm actually trying to convey here.
Yeah, someone's probably clearer
Yeah.
than
It's
this.
like
Yeah.
just starts messing with you. But I always think about when I've had a conversation with someone, or how I just shared with you what my publisher said to me like 7 years ago in regards to abandoning art. And it stuck with me. I may be the one person it ever stuck with, but I know I have dropped that little like nugget with people for the past 7 years whenever I get in a certain conversation with people that are having a hard time letting something move into existence. And I think about like, if that was important to me, what am I saying or not saying that might be really life altering for somebody else? And that's something that I say through AP Creative as a hypocrite half the time, is that if you don't put it out there, you're robbing the world of these gifts and things that might be the thing that triggers a person to do the thing they've been wanting to
Yeah.
do.
But it's not as a hypocrite even. It's like as a someone that learned, like is learning that lesson. So I
Yeah.
like value that even more.
Yeah, and that sometimes it's not like, just because you see people doing it doesn't mean it's easy for them to do it. No
Yeah.
matter how many times you do it, it's like, even I'm like, I do podcasts on Thursday. Well, they go up on Thursday. I try to do stuff in advance because I know myself, and I know that my schedule will get busy and I will get unstructured, and then I'll be like, shoot, now there's pressure. I want to stay consistent. So whenever I sit down to record, and you pointed this out too, where you talk about sometimes you don't feel interesting, or you're not motivated, or you're not inspired, or you don't have an original thought. And then you got to like, what am I going to talk about? I'm like, I literally can turn, I don't know why I doubt that. I literally can turn on my podcasting stuff and just start talking, and it'll be maybe a little clunky in the beginning. And then next thing I know, I'm like, wow, that was
Yeah, you
actually
hit that
really
flow.
helpful for me to hear myself say it. Um, Through your fitness experience, coming out on the other side of that, I know that's an ongoing journey, but that particular experience, how do you think that changed you? Like, how did you come out on the other side of that with like, what did you recognize? How did you evolve through it?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And I think for me, the main thing was that something that's like true to a lot of perfectionism is that what really mattered at the end of it was when I did it. Like I felt like so happy. I can't even describe, like so at peace, so joyful. And it had nothing to do with the actual like placement of the competition or having it be perfect. Like it was just that like I did it. I checked it off. Like I know it's now not something that I'm gonna regret and think back on like, oh, I should have done that, or what would have happened if I did that. That was like that feeling can't be described. And that's what I think I noticed, like that's what you should push for. That's what we're looking for in life, is like that happiness and that fulfillment. It comes from doing it, not necessarily the outcome, but the journey and the action behind it. And I think that was the key thing. And it's similar to with like the YouTube. You probably can attest to that. I think you mentioned something similar before, where the best feeling when it comes to like creating and creating like these videos as well, for me, isn't seeing the 200,000 views. Like that's amazing and all that, but when I feel the best is right after I just like hit publish and it's like, oh, I got that video out, like it's out there. And sometimes it's funny because sometimes like I'll be like only thinking about this video for like days and weeks, and getting anxious about it, or thinking like, should I even do it? Is this right? Does it fit the niche? Does it la la la? And it's like as soon as I press publish, it's like boom, it like that's all that matters. It's like okay, like I did it. Like I pressed publish, like sometimes I don't even like care to look back at it right away because I'm just
Same.
like, I'm like, okay, it's out there. Like I did what I wanted to do. Now let's get rolling with the next one and let's think about that next one. And I think if you chase that feeling of just like what is it that like actually is interesting for you to do, what actually like excites you and get like makes you happy, um, and don't think about the outcome as much, then we just enjoy life so much more, and we'd actually um, just enjoy our day-to-day lives, be a lot happier. So I think that's
Yeah.
the key thing for me is and think less about the outcomes and just more that those day-to-day actions and just the journey more than anything else.
Yeah. And I'm sure that changed your level of confidence. You probably feel amazing. I've been prior to having my baby, which he's like a year and a half now, but I had gone on this journey. It was a mental health journey where I just wanted to like clear my head. So I started doing these cardio workouts. This is back in 2018, cardio workouts 5 days a week. And I started feeling really great. Well, the next thing I know, I started like eliminating certain things from my diet. It was never about a weight loss thing for me. But then 3 years later, I was like, sculpted, I had muscles, I was lifting. And this is when I actually found like Christian Guzman and others. Cause I tend to
Mm,
really, and I think that's probably why my YouTube suggested you to me, is I tend to really relate to men fitness influencers. I think because men are more like, no bullshit. They just kind of like go for it.
yeah,
And there's like other stuff with women. And sometimes when I'm in fitness mode, I just need like, tell me what to do, tell me what to do. So, but anyway, I felt amazing. Like there's nothing like having your body be strong, what that does for your mind, because it actually starts in your mind first, and then it transitions into your body, so you get to see it. I think you even said something
100%.
about the way you look on the outside is representing what's happening in the inside.
Yeah, no, and I think it's like one of those other tools about like noticing yourself, like what makes you feel good and not judging it. Like I
Mhm.
feel like it's a weird space right now sometimes too of like being like, oh yeah, like I want to look good to feel good, but like if that's genuinely if by feeling healthier and eating healthier and working out, like if you feel more confident, if you feel like you look better when you go out and that gives you more confidence to speak to others and film yourself and things like that, I think it's important to not judge it too much of like, oh no, I should be confident on my own, or it doesn't matter how I look or things like that. Like, yeah, you can explore those things with time, but just listen to like also what makes you feel good. Like obviously there's the health benefits of just like eating the correct foods and the endorphins and all of that. But I think the mental aspect of like yeah, just like the other things that like physical fitness can bring you are like really important. It's what I noticed with me. Like I got into like a shell, like when especially like during the pandemic and all that, like I wasn't feeling the best mentally. And then it was just like an extra thing on top of it of like, okay, I don't feel my best mentally, and I feel like I don't look my best either. So it was kind of like, what's the point? Like, I don't want to even get out there. I don't want to socialize. Um, I'm a little bit shy to begin with. I feel initially, so it was another just like barrier of like going out. Like I don't feel good with myself mentally. I don't feel good with myself physically. Um, and so by being able to go through that journey and notice that like, okay, my physical health is something that brings me a little bit more confidence and allows me to initially be maybe sometimes a little like 1% less shy, then that opens me up to connections potentially, and I know I get energy from connections and I like connections. That's something that I want to strive for. So I got to make sure I take care of that physical health, because it's going to lead to other things and like the mental space that are also going to bring me a lot of health. So,
Yeah.
um,
Um, one last question so we can wrap it. I'm like, there's so many more questions. I'm like, I want to ask you so many other things, but I know I
Dave, no,
want to
I
be
just love
respectful of
talking
our
to you as
time.
well. Like,
Well, thank
I
you.
love talking to like
It's been
like-minded
a
people.
lot of fun. There's a couple of times I'm like, look down at your questions and like stay on track for a second. I'm like, well, scratch these off because these ain't happening today. But so I hear you talk a lot in your videos and during this conversation about you purchased a course, you got with a coach, you seem to know to invest into having some sort of accountability partner or something that's going to help take you to that next level. What would you say to people who are really struggling to get themselves started or to stay accountable and consistent, and what your experience has been with working with coaches or buying courses or anything that's been helpful that's actually an investment of yours
Mhm.
that has invested into you?
Yeah, no, so I was really resistant to it like at first. Like I don't come from like the best financial background. Like I had a grew up like with single parent house, and like with my mother, she raised us and did the best she could, and she was like we were good, but it was always of like money was always like a big thing on my mind, like finances and things like that. So I was always really hesitant towards coaching because I never saw it as like something like tangible. There wasn't a product there. There wasn't that something I can feel and touch and see the difference in um, for the longest time. But I think it came a lot with, again, like the noticing, figuring yourself out and what works for you was like a big portion of that. So I noticed like accountability was one. And like for me, it's also a big thing, like to get it's weird because it's not like I don't like gurus of like, oh, like you have to listen to this and that, but I do like people that have been through experiences and have learned through that, and like I really gain like a respect for people that have gone through situations, and I feel like when they provide like advice and things like that, I'm more likely to kind of like listen and um kind of like follow through with the things that they say and all that. So those were just again like tools that I noticed like this helps me get to the places I want to be. Accountability is a huge one, and that can come from coaching. But I think a good point too is like if you aren't in a situation where you can pay for coaching, or you're still hesitant to try it out or things like that, accountability can come from anywhere. So there's a lot of online resources I found for like there's websites where you can like log in and like they pair you with a random person to like work through a goal for 30 minutes. And it's like a virtual like accountability buddy. There's
Nice.
yeah, I know it's there's like some cool online tools for it. And then there's also just like people you could reach out to. Like we all know who we want, who we can have as our accountability buddy, who we can't, because we know there's like that friend that's gonna be like, oh, don't worry about it. Like,
No, yeah,
yeah, you're good.
you're
Like,
human. Yeah.
yeah, we can reschedule for the 15th time.
Yeah.
Uh, but whether it be like reaching out to those friends or online, reach out to someone, uh, have like a virtual one to like tell people your goals and whatnot, sign up for things, I think are different ways of like being accountable towards goals that has been like really helpful for me. So I think, yeah, if you can invest, I definitely recommend it. Um, Sometimes it's funny because like putting yourself in um, a little bit more of discomfort when it comes to investing, it sometimes pushes you to actually do things. So,
Yeah, there's a
um,
pain point now. There's a little bit of
yeah,
pain in there. Yeah.
yeah. So like with the gym, I know like I tell people lots of times like, oh, like go in and splurge on like we all like a lot. I love shopping. Lots of people love shopping. Like go in and splurge on some nice gym outfits. Like they'll help you feel more confident in the gym, and then also after you spent a certain amount, you're like, okay, now I kind of need to go because I
Mm.
just bought all this gym clothes or gear and I want to put it to work. Same with YouTube. Like sometimes a small investment in like a camera or a specific phone or even like a
Mm.
microphone can kind of be that little push of like either I got it, so I want like I need to use it because I got it, or sometimes it's just like oh, I want to try it out. Like I just got this new microphone. I'm curious to see how it sounds. Um, Instead of being like, oh, I got a shopping problem. I gotta sometimes yeah, sometimes myself I over optimize of like I need to be the best budgeter. I need to have my financial situation in gear. I also need to be consistent. I also need this. I also need that. And I think it's all just about like don't judge yourself, learn what works for you, and be okay with using those things. If shopping's a thing, you can figure that out later. You can figure out your um, how to get better at budgeting or whatnot, but you don't have to do it all at once. And you can
Mm.
use some of those tools now.
I love that. And I think that's why so many people, and I mean, myself included, get so blocked in our minds of not ever moving into action because we think we got to do it all at once. That was a big thing with my first book when I started writing it. Well, how will it get published and what would I'll do with it? And my husband just would say these words to me: just write the book. just write the book. And he would say it over and over again every time, because I would just start spinning out of control. And then I don't even know what to do, because I don't know the next step. And he would go, just write the book. That's just the next step, is just finish the book. Do you know how many people don't finish the book? Just finish the book. So I finished it finally. A very rough draft, which is what it should be, it should be, but it was there. And then I wound up meeting with this lady. She was mentoring me. She was a public speaker in the local area. And I asked, could I just like tag along with her, like sit up her table and sell her books? And I just wanted to be around somebody that was doing the things that I potentially wanted to do during that time. And we would go to brunch once a month, and she and I would talk. I never said a word about my book. And we were leaving the restaurant one day, and she turned back and she said, literally, I could sit and talk to you for hours. She was like, I'm your mentor, and I sit and listen to you because I like hearing your stories. And I like hearing what you say. If you ever write a book, she said, please let me know, because I have a publisher I want to connect you with. And I'm like,
that's amazing.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
and
that's so amazing.
I had the book, so I had something prepared and ready to go when the opportunity showed up. And that's my husband is very like few words, but they are so powerful. And that just write the book, just start the channel, just do the podcast, like whatever that is, like just that action, just do it. And I think you are an example of somebody who doesn't have it all together. You get in your head a lot, and just hearing you be so vulnerable and open about that, but still the way it's coming across, like even in our conversation and through your channel, is I'm inspired by you. I wanted to talk to you. I was like, I want people who follow along on my creative outlets to have access to you, to know who you are, and be able to kind of just like get in that well and drink some of that up, because it is motivating. And what you're doing by showing those, like, here I am, I'm doing the thing, but here's like what I'm struggling with as I'm doing the thing. I think it's just really inspiring to see all of it. And it shows a lot of people they have this really refined, pretty product that comes out, but you don't get to hear all of the insecurities that are coming along with it. So thank you for that.
No, thank you so much for the kind words. And I'm also extremely inspired by you, just like listening to like all you've done. I hope to accomplish half the things like I've heard you like already been able to do, like with the books and the podcast and the YouTube. Like I'm super pumped up for just having this conversation. And yeah, I think it all comes down to like especially like for perfectionists, is like, if like perfect doesn't exist, and even if that version of perfect that you have in your head is like out there, then like lots of times like it's lacking that authenticity. Like allowing yourself to be imperfect allows you to be to connect to people, because none of us connect to perfection because it doesn't exist. So if I was able to make the perfect video, it probably wouldn't connect with a lot of people, because no one has seen a perfect video. No one's done a perfect video. No one's lived the perfect life. We're all living different experiences. And so I think that's kind of like a key part. And yeah, it's what pushes me to continue being a little bit more open, or push myself to like try to be authentic, because it's something that I know I needed a couple years back. Was when I would compare myself to others, it was always good when I would run into someone that was actually like real, and like I could see like, oh wow, I really like what you do, and I think it came out really well. But then you get to like peel back a little bit and see like, oh my gosh, like you actually think a lot of the thoughts that I think. You actually have been through a lot of the things that I've been through. If you can do it, why can't I do it? So I think
that's so good. And I think that resonates with so many people. When you talk about perfectionism, that's a huge thing for the Blushing Phoenix community. A lot of people who deal with chronic blushing is there's a perfectionism that's underlining it. That's something that you said you discovered, that you were a perfectionist, and you were like, no way. Is that last year I interviewed a PhD psychologist, and she and I talked about perfectionism, and she didn't diagnose me or anything, but it was through that conversation that I was like, oh my gosh. For me, it was more of like the aesthetic perfectionism, because from the time I was 18, I joined the corporate world. I like went to college. I still have the debt of college, never got out of college, because I was like, I can do this so much faster if I just go. And so I learned, and I mimicked, and I learned everything about what to do in corporate America. And I learned that if you look a certain way, money is tied to that, and position and power is tied to that as well. And so I was able to climb all the way up to a C-suite position, had the baby, didn't return to that job. I work in a management position now, just kind of like helping support the team members. It doesn't matter. It honestly doesn't matter to me. When you get in those high places, you're like, I'm still me. But it was perfectionism. And so if you are red and splotchy, then you are not perfect. And
Exactly.
so
That goes
really
against your
that underlining thing. And then I saw how perfectionism plays out in so many other areas of my life with procrastination. And I'm like you, I'm like, I'm a very, that's good enough. That's good enough. Like, I'm not like, I'm so well prepared and I'm chronically late all the time.
yeah,
And
the same.
I'm like, there's
It's so
no
bad.
way,
It's
no
so
way.
bad.
I know. And so even when I make plans with friends, I'm like 6:30 ish. Like,
Yeah.
we're just I'll be there when I be there. But
All my times have the ish at the,
ish, there's
at the
gotta
end
be
of
an
it. Yeah.
ish.
Yeah.
But Joel, thank you so much for your time today. It has really been a pleasure to talk to you and get to know you. And I'll be sure to link all of your stuff in the description box below so that everybody can find you if they want to reach out to you and watch some of what you're doing over there on YouTube and on Instagram, because I think it's really inspiring and people should definitely come check you out. So thanks for being here.
Awesome. No, thank you so much for having me. It's been like a pleasure talking, and definitely feel free to reach out anytime. I love meeting, like I mentioned, like-minded people, and I think it's part of this journey as well, like of creating and doing the things that you want to do, is that like I found out that that's what actually gets you closer to those people that are also doing the things that they want to do and like that are like-minded and you connect with. So if it's for podcasts or anything, like feel free to reach out. It's been a pleasure like meeting you, getting to know your story as well.
Rise up, rise up, rise up. When you've had enough, when the crowd gets rough, gotta stand up straight, gonna rise like a champion.